As the retail market evolves, demand for new customer-friendly experiences and expanded product offerings has never been higher. But theft, lost and damaged shipments, and food spoilage as high as 25% have led to a $95 billion a year shrinkage problem. To combat this, retail operations teams are deploying a new generation of wireless asset tags, security devices, and condition monitoring sensors, which help reduce shrinkage when deployed at scale. But each of these IoT solutions requires a dedicated network and proprietary cloud service, adding cost and resulting in coverage gaps as products move through the supply chain. This is where Rigado comes in. Our Edge Connect software unifies sensor connectivity and ensures reliable data delivery to the cloud for every use case across the entire retail enterprise. So how does it work? In distribution centers and stores, Edge Connect runs on a fixed wireless network, enabling thousands of sensors to connect simultaneously. This makes use cases such as refrigerator monitoring and asset tracking easier to deploy across a large footprint. While in transit, existing telematics gateways with Edge Connect monitor temperature, motion, and trailer status in real time, then seamlessly hand off to the fixed network as shipments arrive. And throughout the entire journey, Rigado Edge Direct constantly monitors sensor health, and data is delivered to your operations team when and where they need it. The best part? With Rigado, you can onboard new third-party sensors and applications quickly as business needs evolve. For example, the same network running Edge Connect can also connect and monitor thousands of electronic shelf labels, turning a shrinkage reduction problem into a revenue growth opportunity. So if you're a retailer looking for better ways to manage shrinkage, improve store operations, and create better customer experiences, start with a unified network powered by Rigado. Learn more at rigado.com/retail and reach out to us for a conversation about your retail transformation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. The title is How Bluetooth is Powering the Electronic Shelf Label Revolution. I'm excited to feature the Bluetooth Special Interest Group. Good morning, Kayla. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Just a few things before we get into the presentation. I'm VP of Marketing at Rigado. If you've joined Rigado webinars before, you probably know me. There's my contact info. And Kayla is a Senior Product Marketing Manager at the Bluetooth SIG. Kayla, how long have you been with the Bluetooth SIG?
Just over a couple of years.
Great. Well, Kayla is going to be our expert today on all things Bluetooth, Bluetooth low energy. We've got some exciting topics. We're going to focus on electronic shelf labels, but we'll get into some other things as well. There is a Q&A available here. If you're on the Zoom menu, you'll see a chat window. Don't use that for the questions. Please use the Q&A because it allows us to sort and filter the questions as they come in. So please use the Q&A. The presentation here will be recorded. So we're recording the whole Zoom and we'll send that out to everybody that is registered. So you'll be able to see that afterwards. And if we run out of time, we don't get to all the questions, you can always drop us a line at contact@rigado.com. We'll follow up with you afterwards. So today's topics, we're going to do a quick introduction to Rigado and the Bluetooth SIG and tell you about who we are. And then we want to jump into what's going on with retail and electronic shelf labels. This is a very exciting new topic for the retail market and grocery. ESLs go beyond those markets as we see, but we're really going to focus on those use cases. I want to talk about the advantages of Bluetooth for ESLs. I'm going to do a live demo here of some electronic shelf labels in what we call a unified IoT network. And we're going to do a wrap up and a Q&A at the end. So hopefully we can take all your questions and set up for some future events we have coming up. So again, thank you everybody for attending and feel free to drop those questions into the Q&A and some of them we'll take as we go through here if we need to, or we can add to them at the end. Okay, so I know a lot of you have probably heard of Rigado, been on a Rigado webinar before, so I'm just going to do a quick refresher of who Rigado is and our role in the retail space. And because we have some new faces, I want to give time for people to ask any questions and learn more about our role in this. And then we're going to have Kayla introduce herself. So Rigado specializes in powering IoT networks in a unified manner. And when we talk about unified, that means not just one use case or a specific type of sensor device. We really look at the holistic space of the enterprise and try to connect everything together. We are based here in Oregon. I'm actually in Portland, Oregon. Kayla, I think you're up near Seattle, right?
Yeah, we're right outside of Seattle, located in Kirkland, Washington, right on Lake Washington.
So we've got the West Coast well covered here, and our offices are right nearby. We have a lot of experience in Bluetooth low energy, and we've played in various markets from retail to hospitality, construction, pharmaceuticals. As Kayla will attest, the Bluetooth technology, although a lot of us in our daily lives think of it as audio and streaming audio and headsets and things like that, in the IoT space has been used as a predominant technology across many different industries. And we really see ourselves as powering these transitions in the in-store experience, which we're going to talk about today with ESLs, stores and warehouses with asset tags. You might recall our Williet webinar that we had a month ago, where we were looking at battery-free asset tracking with Bluetooth low energy, and also in the retail supply chain, where Williet also plays a role there. So I talked earlier about a unified network approach, and this is what we're going to demonstrate today. So the deep dive is going to be on electronic shelf labels, but for Rigado, it's in the context of a unified network. And what I mean by that is that if you have a large store, or a chain of stores, and they each have a large footprint, and you want to do a lot of different things in them, the first thing you have to do is provide some coverage of signal across all the footprint of that store, whether it's in the front of the store or the back of the store. And so the first thing that we specialize in, is creating what we call a network that is powered by Edge Connect. That software that we have that runs on existing infrastructure like Wi-Fi access points. It could run on mobile gateways. It could run on dedicated gateways in some cases. So once we create that network of Bluetooth low energy, typically, then you can start to connect different sensors, tags from different vendors. And that's what I'm going to demonstrate in a little bit, is how we can kind of harmonize the network in a standards-based way. And I know that is what Kayla likes to hear, because the Bluetooth SIG is driving a lot of those standards. And so we work in conjunction with them to make that happen. And then for us, we specialize in bringing that data into the cloud, directly into your cloud applications, and we help manage and monitor the network like an IT service. That's one of the things that we feel is really important to this approach, is that we make something like IoT look more like an enterprise IT service that has repeatable methodology around supporting it, securing it, getting it to scale. And so there's a lot of benefits we feel with this approach that we're going to talk about as we dive into the electronic shelf label market. And then just quickly, I'll build out how this data delivery happens, because this is kind of the demo in the form of a slide. So typically, when you're building a IoT solution, whether it's in retail or it's in construction, it's in pharmaceuticals, people often think of the sensor. What's the device that is going to be in the person's hand doing these things? And Rigado doesn't make these sensors. We're not a sensor manufacturer. We work with partners that do these things, whether it's electronic shelf labels, you see Williet there, could be temperature monitors, and we help to onboard them into the network in a standards-based way, which really helps the customer have flexibility in their solutions and deploy it in a number of different ways. So this is where Edge Connect, our software, comes into play. It can run on a number of different edge compute platforms. And then we work to onboard the data into the customer's cloud. And that is usually in the form of sensor data. Today, I'm going to be showing bidirectional traffic, because when you're talking about electronic shelf labels, you have to send data down to the edge to change the price on a screen. So that can go in both ways. And then, as I mentioned before, network health data. So there's a whole lot behind how does this get deployed? How do you update the sensors? How do you look at network health, which I'll show a little bit in the demo. But the idea here is that Rigado helps to deliver that data to the cloud and make it more manageable. So that's a little bit about us and maybe a little bit of a teaser for what the demo is going to be later. Before we get into the electronic shelf labels, I'll also mention that Rigado does make those gateways. More and more, we see people wanting to use existing infrastructure like their Wi-Fi access points and edge compute, but we also provide the ability to run on sometimes a dedicated network if you want to have a separate IoT infrastructure there. So with that, I want to let Kayla do a quick intro to the Bluetooth Special Interest Group and about herself.
Thanks, Steve. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the demo now that you've set it up. So my name is Kayla Myrhow. I work at the Bluetooth SIG on the market development team. And for those who may not know, the Bluetooth SIG is a nonprofit standards development organization that oversees Bluetooth technology for the last 25 years. We have a member ecosystem of about 40,000 members who adopt, build, qualify their products against the Bluetooth standard. And we've, of course, seen incredible applications and innovation from our members, just like Rigado, who are accomplishing things that have simply never been done before.
Yeah, and Kayla, Rigado has been in the Bluetooth space for quite a while, and it's fascinating to see the evolution of Bluetooth. Both, obviously the technology has grown quite a bit, but also in terms of we initially started with like Bluetooth headsets and speakers, and that's what we all thought Bluetooth were. And then now, like for instance, myself coming into the market, how much of Bluetooth is actually used for commercial purposes and large scale, manufacturing, just all sorts of different use cases.
Yeah, I mean, great question. Just in 2024 alone, we've seen our standards deliver energy efficient, scalable, interoperable, and deeply secure deployments across mostly retail when we're talking about this space, but manufacturing and the supply chain, of course.
Yeah, and the vaccine cold chain monitoring, I mean, millions and millions of vaccines are monitored using Bluetooth technology, across the whole cold chain. So it's been very impactful to all of our everyday lives, and I think will continue to be, which sets up for our next topic, which is what's happening in the electronic shelf label market. And so I want you to tee us up with a little bit of the standard, and then we'll get into the market side of things.
Oh, absolutely. So, to really position this, how exactly is Bluetooth powering the electronic shelf revolution? I mean, the Bluetooth's ESL standard was adopted with the release of Bluetooth Core Specification version 5.4, which was introduced in February of 2023 last year. And this version specifically added features designed to support ESLs, such as our ESL services and profiles, but also encrypted advertising data to make sure everything's nice and secure, and periodic advertising with response, which of course improves security, scalability, and the power efficiency of these large-scale retail environments that we're talking about.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see that this is another case where I think Bluetooth in the past has come in when there's been some fast-moving technology that's been largely proprietary, and then sub-gigahertz technologies that someone builds vertically very fast, and then finding a way to standardize that so that you can get more players involved to get it commercially viable across the globe is, I think, something that's happened here again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, specifically with electronic shelf label standard, we were approached by retailers, and they realized and recognized that the market itself was highly fragmented based on these proprietary solutions. And so, the opportunity for standards development allowed for the interoperability, vendor interoperability as well, and the scalability of these actual deployments is what retailers were looking for. And so we had wonderful members who came together to build that ESL standard in the Bluetooth SIG. And of course, like I said, back in February 2023, it was available for adoption. And we've seen some really wonderful qualifications help fix that problem in this market.
So let's dive into electronic shelf labels a bit. I've got some market data here. Now, our audience here, I think, is probably a mix of folks that really have experience with IoT and Bluetooth, and then probably some that know the retail space and know the ESL space. And so we're gonna, hopefully talk to both. First is I want to get into why retailers are shifting to ESLs, especially because I think we probably have a lot of people that are in the US here, and we're really lagging on the deployment of electronic shelf labels. I think if you go to Europe and other countries, you see it used a lot more commonly. We're lagging here, but we're catching up. And there are a couple of benefits for retailers, grocers, even like in warehouse and other applications, moving to digital signage and moving to ESLs. And I'm seeing more and more written in the press every day about the transition to ESLs. Obviously, reducing paper waste and improving the price synchronization across thousands of SKUs in the store is great. Just the time spent updating prices. I mean, I've been in the grocery store myself and seen people, sometimes teams of two, manually fixing labels because they want to put something on sale. It's just very time consuming, very labor intensive, and that staff can be used to better help customers and work checkout lines and do other things. So some of these stats, are out there from some of the main players in this space. They've done case studies and seen this happen in the field. 2 to 5% increase in sales within using ESLs. I think this comes because you can, when you move to an electronic shelf label, you can increase the information, change the information that someone is seeing when it comes to having QR codes that they can scan on there for more information. They can more clearly see when something's on sale. So there's a lot of benefits to the end user to having ESLs. And I actually, Kayla, came from some ABI research that was done with the Bluetooth SIG. We're starting to see significant growth in the ESL shipments. And I think that's going to continue as retailers start to see a technology here that they can actually deploy.
Absolutely. We're seeing the growth in the shipments really come from solving that pain of that highly fragmented, market where it's not scalable, it's not interoperable for vendors, and retailers are really excited about the availability of electronic shelf labels that are based on the Bluetooth standard.
Right. So the good news is the value is there for the end customer. If you're a large retailer, or even if you're a smaller retailer and you want to have a better experience in there, there are solutions available. The challenge is that, as I mentioned earlier, the early adopters, a lot of the first rollouts of ESLs tend to have a very, vertical stack proprietary approach to them. I kind of drew this picture on the right here where it's, I have ESLs, I have a dedicated gateway, and then I have a cloud that does everything. And that works great if the only thing you want to do is ESLs, but there's a lot more that you can do beyond ESLs in a store with technology. And if you're not careful, you might find that every time you want to roll out a use case, whether it's ESLs, security cameras, temperature monitoring, asset tracking, locks, you're going to end up with 10 of these pictures in your network diagram pretty quickly. And it also makes it hard for the retailers to have flexibility long-term if they want to add different types of ESLs, if they want to have a multi-vendor approach, if they want to have extensively to those use cases. So I'm hearing this from customers that we talk to. I think that you got that feedback, which is why there is a standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking about what else it could enable in that IoT network, you hit the nail on the head with asset tracking, with temperature monitoring potentially. Those are the benefits that really go into place that you're able to unlock and enable once you're not on this siloed architecture for each ESL deployment.
Yeah, so the old cliche is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we're going to use that to tee up the next picture here, which is Bluetooth bringing a global standard. And the idea that just like in many other cases for enterprise technologies, Wi-Fi to me is one of my favorite examples of this, is just having a standard out there, interoperability. You can have PlugFest, et cetera. Bluetooth has done that for electronic shelf labels, and that's going to solve the problems that we saw on the previous slide, where now you can have multiple ESL vendors, testing against each other and maybe working in the same space, utilizing existing infrastructure. One of the things that we as Rigado see a lot are customers that want to deploy something and they say, well, how many gateways do I need? How do I deploy these gateways? But they might have a whole network already in their ceiling that has Bluetooth Low Energy sitting there, because a lot of the enterprise access points might have that, or they could add that with the dongle. And so they can utilize that infrastructure. So that dramatically lowers deployment costs. A lot of the cost of rolling out a system is in the actual physical installation of gateways in the ceiling. So that's another benefit. And then my favorite thing to talk about is the extensibility to use other devices alongside those electronic shelf labels. And so I put a few examples here, and that's what we're going to demonstrate here. But customers might be thinking about electronic shelf labels, but it's other use cases that they can benefit from once they have that network in place. And because they're all Bluetooth Low Energy, they can run over kind of a single pipeline there, and they don't have to have those siloed network gateways. So with that, I want to jump over to a demonstration. So I'm going to try to sort of pretend like my office here is a store, and we're going to see some of this in action. So let me flip over to, to my browser. Now, I know a lot of you have probably seen a Rigado demo before of sensors and applications. And so I want to start with that because I want to set the stage, and for those that haven't seen it, give them an idea of what we do. So in the discussion earlier, we talked about different use cases you can run before we get to electronic shelf labels. Here in my office, I have one network here. It's running off a Bluetooth gateway. It's all live. I have an air quality monitor. I've got some temperature sensors. We have a door sensor. So my fridge door, this is like a little Bluetooth enabled door sensor. You can see that when I open the sensor, contact sensor, it's open and closed. I've got an asset tag that if I wave it around, we'll start to see the cart in motion, and we'll start to see some speed there. So this is what I consider to be sort of the traditional demonstration of an IoT network. And it all runs over a common Bluetooth interface, but it's using sensors from different companies, and it's unifying them into a data stream, passing it into a cloud application running on Azure IoT Hub. And then I'm using a partner application from Locent to display it. And when I do that, I can do that on an existing network if I wanted to install it using Edge Connect on an existing Wi-Fi access point. In this case, I'm using a Bluetooth gateway. So the thing that I'm going to add to this now is electronic shelf labels. And so I have here from a Bluetooth enabled, this is a BLE shelf label from Solum. They're one of the major Bluetooth shelf label makers, and they have a Bluetooth ESL here. This is a smaller one, a 2.2 inch. These come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, different color options. But what I really want to focus on is I'm going to push a new image to effectively put the cookies on sale. And when I push the image, you can see it says push completed successfully. In about 10 seconds, this will start to flicker and change the price, and we'll see that instead of sensor data just coming up to the cloud, now we've actually sent data down to the edge. You see it flickering there, and it's going to render that image that I just made, send it down, and we're going to see that the cookies went on sale and they're now $2.99. So that took about 15 seconds, and that's pretty common. Obviously, when you have thousands and thousands of them, you want to scale horizontally, and Kayla and I will talk about a little bit how that works. But you can see how that easy that was using that cloud application from, again, our SolUM, because this is their ESL. But at the same time, I've got all these sensors in the background collecting all this information and maybe alerting to me if there's a temperature issue, if the fridge door got left open. So that is the unified aspect of this network that before we never had, right? In the past, I might have had to have a dedicated network over here with one gateway for the ESL and over here for the sensors. Now I can do it all on one network. And that's pretty exciting because if you're a retailer and you want to deploy electronic shelf labels, if you already have an IoT network, now you can run those together. So that's how the ESL application side of things works. Now, what about the management monitoring of it all? This is the other benefit of having that unified network. So if I look at my devices here, I'm going to refresh. This is now looking at our Edge Connect, our Edge Direct application. And you'll see in my list here, this is where your IT team or your operations team can go in and look at the actual devices from a health standpoint. Here's my gateway, no issues reported here. I can see that it's online, what's being used. I've got logs I can go gather. I can look at the configuration and I can look at the device health. And these are the different sensors that I have on my demo environment here. That S4 is a device that does the door sensor. I can look at the battery health of it. I can look at the asset tag, the menu E8. But now I've got this additional SolUM device in here, which has its information, and it's an electronic shelf label. We're sort of working on cleaning up some of these things, like the battery life is a little bit over 100%, but you get the idea of how I can start to see these devices coexisting, right? I've got my air quality monitor here. I've got my asset tag here. If I had Wiliot tags plugged in here, you'd see all those. So this is truly now a unified IoT network running in a standards-based way that can scale up. If you look over here, I've got 24 gateways in this demo organization. You might have 50 per store. You might have thousands across the entire footprint, and you might have millions of end sensor devices that you can alert on. You can take this data and bring it up through an API and see, holistically across the network how things are going. So to me, this is super exciting because it's the first time that we as Rigado have been able to show these devices coexisting in our management system, but also for you, the end customers or solution providers, putting together these technology into something that the end customer can use. Now you can see how these all work together. So Kayla, I think this is the first time you've seen this live. I want to get your quick reaction. Also ask any questions on behalf of the audience, maybe seeing this for the first time.
Well, I will say that I always enjoy a good demo. And the reason why I love this demo so much is really talking about that ecosystem conversation you were having, where you're talking about sensors, ESLs, you're having, asset tracking, these networks can be customized really to each store for each use case, each warehouse, depending on where the application is actually being deployed at. But the nice thing is that there's a lot of actionable insights that come from your demo of this dashboard, and really understanding that's really the benefit for retailers is they can actually take action from this data immediately, and pinpoint maybe where some issues are happening or where low battery is happening. And all of it's happening, like you said, in a very scalable, interoperable way based on standards.
Yeah, and Kayla, maybe you can, because I know this question is on people's mind. I updated the ESL and it updated in about 10 seconds, 15 seconds, which, practically speaking, in a grocery store, you're not updating the prices all the time, right? You maybe do it in a maintenance window in the middle of the night. You don't even update all the prices at once. But I think that the scale and the performance of Bluetooth is certainly as good, if not surpassing what some of the proprietary mechanisms. Can you maybe, without revealing any secrets, give us some feedback that you're getting from some of those deployments you've seen?
Of course, in large scale retail environments, so we like to refer to them as big box retail. You could have up to 10,000 ESLs deployed in one store. We've seen updates happen with, I think the best performance that we've seen based on the Bluetooth standard is about 7,500 ESL tags were updated in less than a minute. And this was updated with various things such as pricing, adding QR codes or adding color modifiers to notify that it's on sale. And so they were doing a variety of things to update these ESLs, and they did it in a very quick way. And like you said earlier in the webinar, that provides some labor saving time and associated with that. But what's really great is then you can take your employees, retailers can kind of reallocate their employees to focus on more customer experience centered solutions. So they're focused on helping folks on the floor, getting them checked out faster, which of course brings some additional benefits to the retailer.
Right. Yes, and obviously in my setup here, you can see it's pretty small. I've got 6 active devices, a couple of sensors, a couple of shelf labels, but obviously in a customer environment, there could be dozens, hundreds per what we call site here in Edge Direct, and there's a horizontal scaling to this. So that's something that I think Bluetooth really brings out, is the ability to scale up. And in a moment, we're going to talk about the future and some exciting things coming out from us and from the Bluetooth SIG. But the performance that we've seen in these environments has been quite good. So I'm going to flip back over to our presentation here. And we're going to bring it back to a Q&A. I don't see any yet I answered one offline. Now would be a great time if folks have questions about the topics we've discussed today, to put them in. I see one coming in that we'll get to. Before we get to the questions, I want to do a quick plug, because there's an exciting event coming up, Grocery Shop. That's in October 7th through the 9th. Rigado is going to have a booth there, and we'll be showing off a lot of this technology. You'll have the opportunity to learn more about us and meet our team. Our CEO will be there. I'll be there. We'll have a number of ways that you can engage with us and learn about a new product that we're announcing October 2nd that we're super excited about. And so if you're going to Grocery Shop, or if you have colleagues going to Grocery Shop, come on and see us there, and we'd love to speak with you. And with that, we're going to dive into the Q&A a little bit. And I had one that I wanted to tee up Kayla for before we get to, there's one coming in online that I see that's a really good one. Kayla, I completely skipped over the part where I was supposed to bring up the Bluetooth 6 standard. And this is super exciting. I know that you're heavily involved in this. What can you tell us about that, and what that's going to do for companies that want to deploy IoT networks? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm excited to talk about it. So it looks like Manesh asked a very important question that I think could potentially be answered through some of the features that we have in development here at the Bluetooth SIG.
Oh, perfect.
The question that Manesh had was, we've seen the Bluetooth spectrum gets very crowded very quickly. Absolutely. Congestion problems absolutely exist. They've had problems connecting a Bluetooth device when the number of devices are higher than 30. And this technology works only when they have a handshake instead of a full connection. So they're asking, have we seen latency in waking up the device on demand or full communication? And the answer is absolutely, we've seen latency waking up the device, especially when that space gets very crowded and highly congested. And so some of the developments that we do have going on here at the Bluetooth SIG are specification features. And this is for Bluetooth version 6.0 and beyond. But one of the features that we do have in development is wake up radios, which is improvement on the wake up protocol, which would help the energy efficiency of that, as well as latency. Some of the additional features and development that we do have that I'd love to mention here is higher data throughput. So we're working on establishing Bluetooth to address the growing market need and intends to support data rates up to 8 megabytes per second. And then the last one that I'd love to plug in here is Bluetooth and higher bands. So this development project is underway to define the operation of Bluetooth low energy and additional unlicensed mid-band spectrums, including both the 5 and 6 gigahertz bands. And we have so much more details of these specifications publicly available on Bluetooth.com on our specifications and development page, which I'll be happy to put a link into the chat for everyone.
Great. Yeah, and got another question about the flow of the data on the ESL side. Does it, and what is Edge Direct's involvement in there? So I'm going to answer that by actually going back to our setup slide here. That's a great question. So in the demo, there's really two paths here. There's this sort of data applications sensor data flow up top. And that is where I clicked, I want to update the image, the data, the communication, went down to the electronic shelf label. And Rigado does not get into the middle of that from a cloud standpoint. We help facilitate that on the edge with the gateway and with our Edge Connect software. But there's nothing you have to do cloud-wise from Edge Direct to make that happen. What Edge Direct does is monitors the health of the devices, make sure that they're online, looks at the battery life, looks at the signal strength. But when I actually update the price on the ESL, we don't have a cloud application that you have to go through to do that. And that's kind of one of our strong points, is that we don't put a cloud in front of the cloud there. And so it makes it move much faster. So the flow is really, in this case, the SolUM cloud out to the edge, and then Rigado from a Bluetooth standpoint helps facilitate that communication out to the ESL. So hopefully that clarifies that part of it. So back to our Q&A. I saw, so we got that one live, and then there was oh yes, Kayla put the spec in the chat. Yeah, I want to say there's tons of valuable information on the Bluetooth SIG site, whether it's case studies, white papers about how ESLs work and are changing, the market. You can see all sorts of great information there about how to get involved if you're considering building a device or putting a service together that you want to go to market with. There's ways to get involved there as well. And I also, Kayla, just to add to what you were saying about performance, one thing that I see as being really useful in the future is expanding the flexibility of the Edge network in terms of having multiple radios. So that's something that we're looking at in future iterations of our devices, having flexibility to other protocols, and then also running on other types of infrastructure. We tend to think of these things as fixed devices that don't move, but we've done some exciting stuff in the past. You've seen our relationship with Cradlepoint and other telematics vendors. So there's a lot of different ways in which Bluetooth low energy can be deployed. It doesn't just have to be in the fixed space. And I think you've seen some case studies where people are deploying ESLs, but not even as an ESL. They're using them in warehouses for stock picking. Give us an example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't be able to mention which customer this is and which vendor is enabling this, but what I can say is we're seeing applications of ESLs deployed in warehousing and manufacturing lines. And then those manufacturing lines, those warehouses, are able to figure out what is their return on investment down to the time saved per item picked. So for example, this manufacturing line uses about 30,000 very specific screws every day, and being able to pick those actual screws and find the right SKU in that warehouse in their massive inventory is very time consuming. And so they're able to also understand when is the inventory of these screws getting low, and when does it need to be, refulfilled in order to make sure that their manufacturing line is continuing to operate at the most efficient state. So they're able to go down to, seconds saved or per screw, which is wonderful. And so that was never really something that we thought we would see from the Bluetooth ESL standard in the application, but it's a very exciting, massively scaled application that we're seeing benefits from.
Great.
I see a
And
really great question.
Yeah,
go
one
ahead,
last
Steve.
question came in. Do customers need to combine ESL with Bluetooth location tracking? I think I'll first say, you don't need to do anything. I think there's a lot of benefits to doing that and knowing where ESLs are. And I think this was something you teased out a little bit with Bluetooth 6, but what are your thoughts on this one, Kayla?
I'll echo what you said. You don't need to. It's definitely not required, but we are seeing things like picking and fulfillment even within retail, where when you do pair this with location tracking, you're able to do those pick to orders much faster. And there are ESLs out there in the market that have LEDs that flash and light to help locate where the actual product is that you're looking for.
Yeah, I was going to say I've got an example of one here that has the LED button, and you can press a little thing on it and it'll start flashing. You can also now, with these being connected, there's a command you can send to remotely have them flash if you need to find them, but having them actually located ahead of time and tied into an application maybe that the staff is using. There's a lot of interesting things to do there. And then how can ESLs tell me my production inventory level?
Yeah, so I'll take this question. How we've seen it applied is the product itself, whether it's in a retail environment or is in a warehousing environment. I'm going to answer it specifically for a warehousing environment.
Sure.
You would have to feed in the information of how many, what is the quantity of the devices that's being there. And then the person who's working the floor are actually doing the picking of it, or the robot that's doing the automation picking for it would actually keep live inventory levels. So every time an item is picked or utilized, there would potentially be a handheld device that helps support and kind of move along the process and keep everything updated. And that's where you'd be able to do, you'd be able to anticipate when these inventory levels are getting low, and you'd be able to see that data over time and maybe be able to do stock fulfillment a little bit before they get low again in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's the classic case of there's the pieces are all here. The technology is all here now that we have a Bluetooth standard that can do these things, and more vendors that are creating the devices. It's the opportunity for solution providers and their customers to actually develop that value on top of it. And that's where folks can come and partner with Rigado, and then also reach out to Kayla for help understanding what are the possibilities there, and what are some of the best practices from a Bluetooth point of view. So those are all great questions. Thanks so much for all of them. We've had great participation on this webinar. I'm going to, as I mentioned earlier, we are going to send out the recording. So everybody that's registered will get a link to the recording so you can see that, review it. And then if you have any follow-up questions, my contact is here, Kayla's as well. Feel free to reach out to us. And with that, I want to thank Kayla for attending. Kayla, it was great having you on this webinar.
Oh, thanks, Steve. I appreciate being invited, and it's always a pleasure to talk about what Rigado's doing and accomplishing, because y'all are doing some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, it's been great chatting with you here, and also all the prep and run up to this. I learned a ton about what's going on with Bluetooth, where things are going. I think I'm really excited about Bluetooth 6, and I expect that we'll have future conversations like this. And thanks to everybody at the Bluetooth SIG for helping get the word out about our webinar, and to all the attendees and great questions. Thanks for all the folks that asked questions, and have a great rest of your day, and look for the recording to come out soon.